We didn't forget your birthday, we just didn't care. My dad said those words while throwing my homemade birthday cake onto the kitchen floor. Buttercream frosting, the same recipe my mother used before cancer took her, splattered across the tiles I had mopped that morning. Behind him, my stepbrother Marcus laughed with his mouth full of the steak dinner I had spent 4 hours preparing for his friends on my birthday. Now clean up the kitchen, Dad added, already walking away. I am Bianca, 24 years old. What my family didn't know was that I had been managing our home security system for 3 years. 4 cameras, 90 days of footage, and a hard drive in our garage that held secrets dark enough to destroy everything my golden child stepbrother had built, including his $47,000 engagement. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. From the outside, our house looked like something from a real estate magazine. 4,200 square feet in Cherry Hills Village, a suburb south of Denver, where the lawns were always trimmed and the neighbors waved from their BMWs. Picture perfect. But picture perfect is just another word for well hidden. My mother, Catherine, died of breast cancer when I was 11. Stage 4. By the time they found it, she had 6 months. She spent those months teaching me how to cook her recipes, braiding my hair, telling me I was stronger than I knew. I didn't believe her then. I spent years not believing her. 14 months after her funeral, my father married Linda Sullivan. Linda came with 2 children from her first marriage, Marcus, who was 14 at the time, and Chelsea, who was 12, the same age as me. Within a week of the wedding, I was moved from my bedroom on the second floor to the basement. The room my mother had painted lavender because it was my favorite color became Chelsea's walk-in closet. She needs the space, Linda explained with a smile that never reached her eyes. You understand, don't you, sweetie? I understood. I just didn't have the words for it yet. My 12th birthday came 3 weeks after the move. No one mentioned it. No cake, no card, no acknowledgement that I existed beyond the dishes in the sink. That same month, Chelsea turned 13. Linda rented out the backyard, hired a DJ, and invited 50 kids from school. I watched from the basement window, eating leftover pizza I'd found in the fridge. That was the first year I learned the rules of my new family. Marcus and Chelsea were the children. I was something else entirely. By 13, my role in the household had crystallized into something with a schedule. Mondays through Sundays, breakfast by 7, dinner by 6:30. I cooked every meal. Linda claimed she had sensitive wrists that prevented her from kitchen work, though those same wrists managed fine when she was shopping or getting manicures. Laundry was my responsibility too. 4 people's worth, including Marcus's gym clothes that smelled like a locker room, had died. I ironed Gerald's shirts. My father insisted I call him that after the wedding, said Dad felt complicated now. And Linda's blouses. Vacuuming, mopping, bathroom scrubbing. Yard work when the landscapers were too expensive this month. Marcus never lifted a finger. He'd leave dishes on the coffee table, plates crusted with food, and walk away knowing I'd clean up behind him. Once I asked him to put his plate in the sink. He laughed and said, "That's literally why you're here." Chelsea was subtler but no less cruel. She'd spill things and call for me. "Bianca, I dropped my smoothie," as if I were a servant on call. Gerald saw all of it. He said nothing. When I got accepted to the University of Colorado Denver with a 60% scholarship in cybersecurity, I thought things might change. I was the first in the family to earn academic merit. I'd studied through nights in that basement room, teaching myself to code on a second-hand laptop. Gerald's response, "At least you won't cost me too much. Marcus's MBA is expensive." Marcus, who'd gotten into a middling business school because Gerald donated $50,000 to their alumni fund. I did the math once. If I had been paid minimum wage for every hour of housework since age 13, the total would exceed $47,000. Instead, I got a cot in the basement and leftovers for dinner. What my family never understood or cared to learn was that those years in the basement had made me valuable in ways they couldn't see. I graduated from CU Denver with a 3.89 GPA in cybersecurity. While Chelsea was buying Instagram followers and Marcus was partying through his MBA program, I was learning how to protect systems, trace digital footprints, and verify data integrity that would hold up in court. By 24, I was an IT security analyst at Meridian Financial Services, earning $78,000 a year. My family thought I fixed computers. They had no idea what I actually did or what I was capable of. 3 years ago, Gerald decided he wanted a home security system. A professional installation would cost $2,500, cameras, monitoring, smart locks, the whole package. He balked at the price. "Can't you just do it?" he asked me during one of my rare dinners upstairs. "You're good with that tech stuff." I could have said no, I should have said no. But some part of me, the part still hoping to earn my place, agreed. I spent 2 weekends installing 4 high-definition cameras. One in the living room, one in the garage, one at the front door, and one covering the backyard. I configured a smart lock system with individual access codes for each family member. Every entry was logged with timestamps. And I set up a 4 terabyte hard drive in the garage that stored 90 days of continuous footage. Gerald never learned how to access any of it. He'd ask me to check the cameras whenever he thought he heard something outside, then promptly forget the system existed. The admin password, the backup codes, the entire digital infrastructure, all of it lived in my head alone. I hadn't planned to use it for anything. Not then. Marcus had been dating Rebecca Hayes for 2 years when they got engaged. She was 26, a marketing manager at her father's company, and the only person in Marcus's orbit who ever treated me like a human being. I remember the first time we actually talked. It was Christmas 2 years ago, and the house was packed with Gerald's business associates and their families. I was doing my usual routine, refilling drinks, clearing plates, being invisible, when Rebecca found me in the kitchen. "You're Bianca, right?" she asked, leaning against the counter. "Marcus's stepsister?" I nodded, bracing for whatever condescending comment would follow. Instead, she said, "He mentioned you work in tech security. That sounds fascinating. What exactly do you do?" No one in that house had ever asked me about my work. I stumbled through an explanation about network vulnerabilities and data protection. And Rebecca listened. Actually, listened. She asked follow-up questions. When I mentioned I'd built the home security system, her eyebrows rose with genuine interest. "That's really impressive," she said. And then, glancing around to make sure no one was watching, she handed me the last slice of pecan pie. "You should eat something. You've been working all night." Small kindness, enormous impact. Later that evening, I overheard Rebecca talking to Marcus in the hallway. "Doesn't it bother you that your stepsister does all the housework?" she asked. Marcus laughed. "She likes it, gives her something to do." Rebecca didn't laugh back. A few months before the engagement party, Rebecca and I crossed paths at a family dinner. She looked tired, distracted. When Marcus excused himself to take a call, she turned to me with an expression I couldn't read. "Does Marcus travel a lot for work?" she asked quietly. "His phone always seems to be off when he's away." I didn't have an answer then. I wish I had. December 7th, 2025. My 24th birthday. I woke up at 5 in the morning, which was nothing unusual. What was unusual was the flicker of hope in my chest. Hope I knew better than to trust, but couldn't quite extinguish. 1 week earlier, Linda had pulled me aside after dinner. "We should do something for your birthday this year," she said, her voice carrying that practiced warmth she used when she wanted something. "A small dinner, just family." Just family. As if I'd ever been included in that word. Still, I let myself believe. Maybe things were changing. Maybe 13 years was long enough for them to see me differently. I spent the morning baking a red velvet cake, my mother's recipe, the one she'd taught me during her last months. Cream cheese frosting, exactly the way she made it. The kitchen smelled like her for a few hours, and I let myself pretend she was there. By 10 in the morning, Linda appeared with a revised plan. "Marcus is having a few friends over tonight," she announced while scrolling through her phone. "I'll need you to help with the food. Nothing fancy, just steaks, potatoes, a couple sides. Maybe 12 people? But, I started, you can do your birthday thing after. It's not a big deal, right? It wasn't a question. By 2 in the afternoon, I had prepared beef tenderloin, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted asparagus, Caesar salad, and fresh dinner rolls. 12 servings of food I wouldn't be sitting down to eat. Gerald came home at 5. He walked past me in the kitchen without a word. No happy birthday, no acknowledgement that December 7th meant anything at all. I put my red velvet cake in the refrigerator, telling myself I'd bring it out after dinner. I still believed it then. That was my mistake. The guests arrived at 7. 12 of Marcus's friends, mostly colleagues from Gerald's company, and people he'd met during his 1 year of MBA school before quietly dropping out. A fact I'd later learn that no one in the family besides Marcus knew. I answered the door, took coats, offered drinks. When Marcus introduced me to the group, he gestured vaguely in my direction and said, "That's just Bianca. She lives in the basement." One of the men, mid-30s, slicked back hair, the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no, looked me up and down. "Is she the maid?" Marcus grinned. "Basically, yeah." Everyone laughed. I kept my face neutral and asked if anyone needed a refill. For 3 hours I served, poured wine, cleared plates, refilled bread baskets, fetched extra napkins when someone spilled. Gerald sat at the head of the table, holding court about his construction company's latest contracts. Linda complimented the meal as though she'd made it herself. "The tenderloin is divine," one guest remarked. "Thank you," Linda replied smoothly. "Family recipe." I said nothing. What was there to say? Chelsea appeared briefly to snap photos for her Instagram. I watched her frame the shot carefully. Gerald, Linda, Marcus, and 2 of his better-looking friends. The caption would probably mention family dinner with a heart emoji. I wasn't in any of the pictures. I never was. Rebecca wasn't there. When I'd asked Marcus earlier where his fiancée was, he'd waved off the question. "Work thing, she's busy." Something about the way he said it nagged at me. Rebecca was meticulous about appearances, about supporting Marcus at events. Her absence felt wrong, but I had tables to clear and dishes to wash. I filed the thought away and kept moving. It was almost 10 when I finally allowed myself to hope again. I stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in soapy water, listening to the laughter from the dining room. The sound was muffled by distance and walls, but I could pick out Gerald's booming voice, Marcus's performative charm, Linda's practiced delight. They were a family in there. I was the help. 13 years. I did the math in my head because numbers were easier than feelings. 13 years of waking up early. 13 years of cooking meals I was rarely invited to eat. 13 years of birthdays that passed without candles or songs, or anyone saying my name with affection. I thought about my mother. What would she say if she could see this? She would be heartbroken. She would be furious. She would tell me I deserved more than a basement room and silence on my birthday. The thought hit harder than expected. I gripped the edge of the sink, steadying myself. Daniel, my colleague at Meridian, the closest thing I had to a real friend, had said something to me last month over coffee. "You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't lift a finger if you were freezing." I'd laughed it off then. It didn't feel funny now. If I kept silent, what would I lose? The same things I'd been losing for 13 years, my dignity, my sense of self, my belief that I mattered. And Rebecca. If I stayed quiet about whatever was making her uneasy, she would marry Marcus, never knowing who he really was. She would have children with him, build a life with him, and discover the truth when it was too late. Rebecca, who had given me pie when no one was looking, who had asked about my work like it mattered. I scrubbed the last plate and set it in the rack. It was time to get my cake. I dried my hands, smoothed down my shirt, and opened the refrigerator. The red velvet cake sat on the middle shelf, exactly where I'd left it. 3 layers, cream cheese frosting swirled in peaks. My mother's recipe, made with my hands, for my birthday that no one had remembered. I carried it into the dining room. The conversation faltered as I set the cake on the table. Marcus looked up from his whiskey with something between confusion and annoyance. Linda's smile froze. Gerald set down his glass. I made this, I said, hating the tremor in my voice. It's my birthday today. Silence. 12 pairs of eyes on me. Then Gerald laughed. Not a kind laugh. Not an, oh, we forgot, how silly laugh. A cold, dismissive sound that made my stomach drop. We didn't forget your birthday, Bianca, he said, leaning back in his chair. We just didn't care. Marcus snorted. Seriously? You're doing this now? I stood frozen, the cake between us. Gerald reached across the table, grabbed the edge of the cake plate, and pushed it off the table. It hit the floor with a wet thud. Red velvet crumbled. Cream cheese frosting splattered across the hardwood, the same hardwood I had mopped that morning. Now clean up the kitchen, Gerald added, already turning back to his guests. Chelsea giggled from the corner. Maybe next year, basement girl. A few of the guests looked uncomfortable. One man, an older gentleman I recognized as a potential business partner, watched Gerald with an expression that might have been disgust. But no one spoke up. No one intervened. I looked down at my mother's cake, destroyed on the floor. Something inside me shifted, cracked, broke free. I knelt down and began to clean. But not because they told me to, because I needed time to think. I wiped frosting from the hardwood in slow, deliberate strokes. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That surprised me. After 13 years of swallowing my anger, I'd expected tears, hysteria, the kind of breakdown they probably wanted so they could call me dramatic and dismiss me entirely. Instead, I felt something cold and clear crystallizing in my chest. They want you to cry, I thought. They want you to beg. Don't give them either. From the dining room, I heard Gerald's voice, smooth and apologetic, but not to me. She's always been emotional. Her mother coddled her too much before she passed. My hands stopped moving. He was blaming my mother. My dead mother, who had spent her final months teaching me to be strong. Who had loved me fiercely and completely and without condition. That was the line. I finished cleaning in silence, every movement precise, every breath controlled. When the last smear of red velvet was gone, I stood, gathered the trash, and walked back through the dining room. The kitchen is clean, I said, my voice flat. Gerald didn't look up. Good. You can go to bed now. I didn't respond. I walked past the table, past the guests who wouldn't meet my eyes, past Chelsea's smirk and Marcus's indifference. I didn't go to bed. I went to the garage. The door closed behind me, sealing out the noise of the dinner party. The space was cold, smelling of motor oil and concrete. Gerald's BMW gleamed under the fluorescent lights, next to Linda's Mercedes, next to the empty spot where my 8-year-old Honda lived. But I wasn't looking at the cars. I was looking at the metal cabinet in the corner, the one housing the security system, the one only I could access. I pulled out my keys and unlocked it. The cabinet door swung open, revealing the neat arrangement of equipment I'd installed 3 years ago. Router, network switch, and the Seagate 4 TB hard drive that recorded everything. My hands moved on autopilot. I'd checked this system hundreds of times, but tonight felt different. Tonight I was looking for something specific. I connected my laptop to the hard drive and began scrolling through the footage archive. 90 days of recordings, 4 cameras, thousands of hours. I started with tonight. There it was, Gerald throwing my cake, the frosting spreading across the floor, my face expressionless as I knelt to clean. Timestamp, December 7th, 2025, 10:14 p.m. Evidence of humiliation. Useful, maybe, for my own records. A reminder if I ever weakened of why I left. But that wasn't what made me stop breathing. I scrolled backward through the timeline. November, October, September. Looking for nothing in particular, just looking. And then I found it. November 23rd, 2:47 p.m. The whole family had gone to visit Marcus's grandmother in Colorado Springs. I'd stayed behind because someone needed to watch the house, which meant I wasn't invited. On the living room camera, the front door opened. Marcus walked in. Behind him, a woman. Not Rebecca. Blonde hair, pencil skirt, high heels. I recognized her. Jessica Palmer, the marketing coordinator at Gerald's company. I'd seen her at office parties, always hovering near Marcus, always laughing too loudly at his jokes. On the screen, Marcus pulled her close. Their mouths met. His hands moved to places that left no room for misinterpretation. They disappeared toward the hallway, toward the guest bedroom. My stomach turned. I checked the smart door log. Marcus's personal code had unlocked the front door at 2:41 p.m. Jessica had no code. He'd let her in himself. I kept searching. There had to be more. 7 times. In 90 days of footage, Marcus had brought Jessica Palmer to the house 7 times. The pattern was sickeningly consistent. Always when the family was away, always during what Linda called Marcus's work-from-home days. I exported the 3 clearest video clips onto a USB drive. The timestamps were embedded in the footage, automatically generated by the system I had built. November 2nd, 1:17 p.m. November 16th, 3:42 p.m. November 23rd, 2:47 p.m. Each one showed faces clearly. Each one showed behavior that required no interpretation. Then I pulled the smart door logs. Every entry to the house was recorded with the individual access code used. Marcus's code, 4729, appeared 7 times during hours when no one else was home, each instance followed by the front door camera capturing Jessica's arrival within minutes. The metadata was forensic grade. I'd designed it that way because Gerald had once accused the landscapers of stealing a garden hose, and he'd wanted proof. He got his proof. The landscapers were innocent. I copied the door logs to the USB alongside the videos. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd just discovered my stepbrother was cheating on the only person in his life who had shown me kindness, and my hands were steady. But my mind was racing. What was I supposed to do with this? Rebecca deserved to know. That wasn't even a question. She was 6 weeks away from marrying a man who had cheated on her at least 7 times in 3 months. She had put down $47,000 on a wedding at the Broadmoor. But was it my place? Did I have the right to destroy her future based on footage I'd accessed from a system I managed? I needed a second opinion. I needed someone who understood evidence. I needed Daniel. Daniel Reeves answered on the 3rd ring. Bianca? His voice was rough with sleep, then sharpened with concern. It's 11 at night, on your birthday. What's wrong? I almost laughed. Of course Daniel remembered my birthday. He'd left a card on my desk that morning, which I'd hidden in my bag before anyone could see and ask questions. I need to ask you something, I said, keeping my voice low even though I was alone in the garage. About data integrity. A pause. I heard him sitting up, sheets rustling. Okay, shoot. If someone had security footage, home system, not professional, could the metadata be faked? The timestamps? The authentication markers? Depends on the system. I could hear him thinking, slipping into work mode. If it's consumer grade, maybe. If it's properly configured with hash verification and embedded timestamps. He trailed off. Wait, are you talking about the system you built at your dad's house? Yes. Then no. That footage would hold up in court. You designed it that way, remember? After your dad accused the landscapers? I remembered. Bianca. Daniel's voice shifted again. What happened tonight? What did they do? I told him. The cake, the words, the floor, and then haltingly what I'd found on the footage. He was silent for a long moment when I finished. You're going to tell Rebecca, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm thinking about it. Good. Another pause. Whatever you're planning, make sure it's for the right reasons. Not revenge, not anger. The right reasons. Someone who is kind to me deserves to know the truth, I said. That's the only reason I need. Then you already know what to do. I heard him exhale. And Bianca, I'm proud of you for finally choosing yourself. The words hit harder than I expected. After hanging up with Daniel, I sat in the garage for a long time. The USB drive was warm in my palm. 3 videos, 7 door logs, evidence that could end a $47,000 engagement. Who was I to interfere? The question circled in my mind. Marcus was awful to me, yes. But this wasn't about Marcus. It was about Rebecca. A woman who had shown me kindness when no one else would, who was about to bind her life to a man who had betrayed her at least 7 times that I knew of. Wasn't silence its own form of betrayal? I thought about what Rebecca had said at that family dinner months ago. Does Marcus travel a lot for work? His phone always seems to be off when he's away. She already suspected. She just didn't have proof. I could give her proof. The question was whether I should. My mother's voice came to me then, faint but clear. Always tell the truth, Bianca, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I opened my laptop. The email took me 20 minutes to write. I rewrote it 4 times, trying to find words that weren't accusatory, weren't vindictive, weren't anything except honest. The final version. Rebecca, I debated sending this because I know it will hurt. But you once told me you wanted honesty above everything. The attached files are from our home security system. Timestamps and metadata are authentic. I can verify the data integrity professionally if needed. I'm sorry. Bianca. I attached the 3 video files and the door log screenshots. My hand hovered over the send button. This would destroy Marcus. It would enrage Gerald. It would end whatever fragile tolerance my family had for my existence. But Rebecca deserved the truth. I pressed send. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., December 7th, 2025. I woke at 6 the next morning, same as always. The house was quiet. Gerald and Linda were still asleep. They never rose before 8 on weekends. Marcus had crashed in his old room after the party, probably too drunk to drive back to his company-funded apartment downtown. I made breakfast. It sounds absurd now. Hours after sending an email that would detonate my stepbrother's life, I was standing in the kitchen making eggs and bacon like nothing had changed. But routine was armor. As long as I moved through the motions, no one would suspect. By 8:30, the family drifted downstairs. Gerald sat at the head of the table, reading the Denver Post on his tablet. Linda scrolled through her phone, making notes about the engagement party scheduled for next week. Chelsea appeared in yoga pants, already complaining about the coffee temperature. Marcus was last, looking rough. He grabbed a plate without acknowledging me, slumped into his chair, and pulled out his phone. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Buzzed again. Ignored. The third buzz made him glance at the screen. Something flickered across his face, confusion maybe, before he silenced it and shoved the device in his pocket. Who keeps calling? Linda asked absently. No one. Work stuff. I poured myself coffee and sat at my usual spot at the corner of the table, close enough to be on call, far enough to be invisible. Gerald was discussing the engagement party, the venue reservation, the guest count, the importance of impressing Thomas Hayes. This investment could take the company to the next level, he said. 2.3 million. We need everything to be perfect. I sipped my coffee. They had no idea that the email I'd sent 8 hours ago would arrive in Rebecca's inbox before their breakfast was finished. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Before I tell you what happened when Rebecca read that email, I want to ask you something. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed how you saw someone? Someone you trusted, someone you thought you knew? Comment below and tell me your story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Because what happens next is something you don't want to miss. I learned what happened next from Rebecca herself, weeks later. She was getting ready for work that morning, December 8th, 7:30 a.m., when she checked her email. A message from an address she recognized, my work email at Meridian Financial. The subject line was empty. She told me she almost deleted it, almost dismissed it as spam or some automated system notification, but something made her open it. I debated sending this because I know it will hurt. Rebecca said her first instinct was denial. Bianca must have made a mistake. The footage must be old or edited or taken out of context. Then she watched the first video. November 2nd, 1:17 p.m. Marcus and Jessica Palmer in the living room of the house where Rebecca had eaten Thanksgiving dinner 3 weeks later. She watched the second video, then the third. She pulled up the door log screenshots. 7 entries. Marcus's personal access code. Times and dates when he'd told her he was at the office or at the gym or visiting clients out of town. Her phone fell out of her hands. For a long moment, Rebecca said, she just sat there, not crying, not screaming, just sitting with the weight of the truth settling into her bones. Then she called Marcus, straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. 3 more times. Finally a text. Busy. Call you tonight. Rebecca stared at the message. 3 words from the man she was supposed to marry in 6 weeks. The man who had promised to love and honor her. The man who had been sleeping with his co-worker in his father's house while she planned their wedding. She didn't call again. She began to plan. December 15th, 2025, 7 p.m. The Capitol Grill in downtown Denver had been transformed for the Monroe Hayes engagement celebration. Gerald had reserved the private dining room, 3,000 square feet of mahogany paneling, crystal chandeliers, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. The bill for the evening would exceed $15,000. 85 guests filled the space. Business partners, country club acquaintances, Gerald's construction company executives, Thomas Hayes's marketing firm leadership, everyone who mattered in both families' social orbits. I was there too, not as a guest, never as a guest, but as the designated family photographer. Also presumably as backup if the catering staff needed help. I wore the only dress I owned that wasn't for work, a simple black sheath I'd bought at a consignment store 2 years ago. Chelsea had looked me over when I arrived and laughed. That's what you're wearing? To an engagement party? I didn't respond. I had other things on my mind. The room hummed with expensive perfume and strategic networking. Gerald worked the crowd, shaking hands, slapping backs, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. He was performing tonight, showing Thomas Hayes the kind of family his daughter was marrying into. Thomas Hayes stood near the bar, a silver-haired man with sharp eyes and a reputation for ethical business practices. His company was worth $60 million. The $2.3 million investment Gerald wanted represented pocket change to him, but it would transform Monroe Construction from a regional player into something significant. Marcus circulated through the room with a confidence that turned my stomach. He was wearing a $3,000 suit Gerald had bought him, accepting congratulations, playing the golden child to perfection. Rebecca hadn't arrived yet. No one seemed worried. The bride-to-be was probably just running late. Traffic, last-minute wardrobe decisions. I knew better, something was coming. At 7:30, the doors to the private dining room opened. Rebecca walked in alone. She wasn't wearing the designer dress she'd shown me weeks ago, the emerald green one that cost more than my monthly rent. She was in jeans, a white blouse, minimal makeup. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. The room went quiet in stages, conversations dying like candles in a sudden wind. Marcus saw her first. His champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. "Rebecca? What? Why are you—" She walked toward him. Steady, deliberate. The crowd parted without being asked. "Rebecca, please." Marcus's voice dropped low, urgent, panicked. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" She pulled out her phone. "This?" The room had a presentation screen connected to a wireless system. Gerald had insisted on it for his speech. Rebecca's phone synced with a single tap, and suddenly the footage was everywhere. Marcus, Jessica Palmer, the living room of Gerald's house. Timestamp, November 23rd, 2:47 p.m. No one breathed. For 8 seconds, the only sound was the video, muffled audio, unmistakable visuals. Then the screaming started. "What the hell is this?" Gerald lunged toward the screen. Thomas Hayes stood frozen, his face cycling through disbelief, fury, and something that looked like nausea. Rebecca's voice cut through the chaos. "This is your son, Mr. Monroe, in your house, with his co-worker." She paused. 7 times in 90 days. She turned to Marcus, who had gone the color of old milk. "The wedding is off. The engagement is off." Her voice was steady as steel. "We're done." In one fluid motion, she pulled the ring from her finger and placed it on the table in front of him. The silence that followed was deafening. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Jessica Palmer was standing by the bar, at the party, watching herself on screen. Gerald's face had gone purple. This is clearly a misunderstanding." He was stammering, something I'd never seen him do. The man who controlled every room he entered was losing control of this one by the second. "A misunderstanding?" Thomas Hayes stepped forward, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I just watched your son cheat on my daughter, in your house, on footage you apparently had access to." "Tom, please, this is a family matter." "A family matter?" Hayes's voice rose. "I was going to invest $2.3 million in your company, Gerald. I was going to trust you with my money, my reputation, and this is the family I would have been tied to?" Gerald opened his mouth, but no words came out. Linda tried next, grabbing Marcus's arm and pulling him toward the door. "We need to leave. This isn't the place." "No." Rebecca blocked their path. "Everyone here deserves to know who they're really doing business with." She turned to Gerald, and something cold flickered in her eyes. "You knew about Jessica, didn't you? The late nights at the office? The mentoring sessions Marcus told me about?" Gerald's silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought." Chelsea pushed forward from the crowd, her face flushed. "This is insane. Who even recorded this? How did you—" Rebecca cut her off without looking at her. "Your stepsister, the one you call the maid, the one who built your entire security system because your father was too cheap to hire professionals." 85 pairs of eyes swiveled toward me. I was standing near the back wall, camera still in my hands. For 13 years, I had been invisible in this family. Background noise, the help. Now everyone was looking. I didn't look away. Gerald's face contorted as he turned toward me. "You did this?" His voice cracked with a rage I'd never heard directed at me so openly, though it had always been there underneath. "You betrayed your own family?" I set the camera down on a nearby table. My hands weren't shaking. "No, Dad." The word felt strange on my tongue after years of Gerald. "I told the truth to someone who deserved it." Marcus stepped toward me, fists clenched. "You ruined my life." "You ruined your own life, Marcus." My voice was calm, level. "I just documented it." Linda inserted herself between us, her face twisted with fury. "We took you in. We gave you a home. You gave me a basement room and 13 years of unpaid labor." The words came out measured, practiced in my head 1,000 times. "That's not a home. That's servitude." The room was utterly silent. 85 people frozen, watching a family implode. Gerald tried one more time. "Your mother would be ashamed of you." Something shifted in my chest. Not anger. That was too hot for what I felt. This was cold. Clear. Final. "My mother loved me," I said. "You blamed her for that, and you spent 13 years trying to make me pay for it." I picked up my bag from where I'd left it by the wall. "She would be ashamed of what you've become." I turned to Rebecca, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Gratitude, maybe. Or recognition. One survivor seeing another. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner," I said to her. "I didn't have proof until last week." Rebecca nodded once. "Thank you, Bianca, for being honest when no one else was." I walked toward the door. Before I reached the exit, Thomas Hayes's voice stopped me. "Wait." He wasn't talking to me. He was walking toward Gerald, and every step seemed to add weight to the silence. Tom! Gerald's voice had shifted, pleading now, stripped of its usual authority. Let's talk about this privately. The investment, the partnership, none of this has to affect? Hayes stopped directly in front of Gerald. You want to talk about what this affects? He gestured around the room. I was going to write you a check for $2.3 million, Gerald. I was going to bet my reputation on your company, on your family. I can explain. Explain what? That your son is a cheater? That you covered for him? That you treat your own daughter like hired help while your stepchildren get Porsches and corner offices? Hayes shook his head slowly. I've built my entire career on knowing who to trust, and I clearly can't trust you. Gerald's face crumbled. Tom, please. The deal is off. Hayes's voice was flat, final. And I'll be advising my contacts in the Denver business community to reconsider any dealings with Monroe Construction. He turned to Rebecca, his expression softening. Let's go, sweetheart. You've said what you needed to say. Rebecca paused at the door. She looked back at me one more time, a small nod, weighted with meaning, and then they were gone. The room began to empty. Guest after guest slipped out, avoiding Gerald's desperate attempts to salvage conversations. I watched a man I recognized, another potential investor Gerald had been courting, shake his head and leave without a word. In 20 minutes, the 85 guests had dwindled to a dozen. The $15,000 party had become a wake for a future that would never exist. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I was almost at the elevator when I heard it, raised voices echoing from the private dining room. Against my better judgment, I paused. Through the partially open door, I could see Jessica Palmer pressed against the back wall of the room, her face ghost white. She'd been trying to slip out unnoticed, but someone had recognized her from the footage. Carol Whitmore, Monroe Construction's HR director, stood in front of her with a tablet in hand. Carol had been one of the first people to show me basic kindness when I occasionally visited the office as a teenager. She was also known for taking company policy very seriously. Jessica, Carol's voice was professional but sharp. I'm going to need you in my office, Monday morning, 8 a.m. Carol, this isn't, I can explain. The footage shows interactions during business hours, on days when your time card indicated you were working remotely. Carol's eyes were cold. This is a clear violation of Section 12 of the Employee Handbook. Misuse of company time, inappropriate workplace relationship. We'll discuss the details on Monday. Marcus stepped forward. It wasn't her fault. Stay out of this, Marcus. Carol didn't even look at him. You're not exactly in a position to help anyone right now. Jessica's composure finally cracked. She spun toward Marcus, mascara starting to run. You told me you were going to break it off with her. You said you were unhappy, that the engagement was a business arrangement. Shut up, Jessica. Marcus's voice was low, panicked. Just shut up. One of the remaining guests, an older man I recognized as a longtime contractor for Gerald, shook his head audibly. Some party, Gerald. Really showed us who your family is. Gerald said nothing. For once, he had nothing to say. I pressed the elevator button and didn't look back. I made it to the lobby before Gerald caught up to me. Bianca! His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Bianca, stop! I kept walking toward the parking garage entrance. He grabbed my arm, spinning me around. For a moment, I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Fear. Raw, unconcealed fear. You can't just leave. His voice was hoarse. Where will you go? I pulled my arm free. I've been paying rent on an apartment for 6 months. I just never had the courage to move in. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. 6 months? Why didn't you say anything? When would I have said it? Between cooking your dinner and ironing your shirts? I stepped back, putting distance between us. You never asked what I did with my life because you didn't care. That's not... He stopped. Even he couldn't finish that lie. What about the house? Gerald's tone shifted, grasping now, desperate. The security system, the passwords, you can't just. I changed the admin password last night. I almost smiled. Almost. You'll need to hire a professional to reset the whole system. Should cost about $2,500, the same amount you didn't want to pay 3 years ago when you made me do it for free. We're your family. The word hung between us. No. I shook my head slowly. You're the people I share DNA with. Family doesn't treat each other like this. I turned and walked into the parking garage. The December air was sharp, biting, clean. My car, my 8-year-old Honda with the dented fender, waited in the far corner where I always parked, away from the expensive vehicles that mattered. I unlocked the door, slid into the driver's seat, and sat there for a moment. Then I started the engine and drove toward my future. Right now, take a moment to think. Is there a boundary you've been afraid to set? A truth you've been afraid to speak? Comment freedom below if you've ever walked away from something toxic or if you're planning to. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss how this story ends. Trust me, the aftermath is something. My apartment was in Capitol Hill, a studio on the 4th floor of a brick building that had been converted from an old warehouse. 600 square feet, one room, one bathroom, a tiny kitchen with a 2-burner stove. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. I'd signed the lease in June, during a lunch break when I'd finally admitted to myself that I couldn't keep living in that basement. For 6 months, I'd been paying $1,200 a month for an empty apartment, an escape hatch I was too scared to use. Tonight I used it. The space was barely furnished, a bed I'd bought from a secondhand store, a small desk for my laptop, a single chair, no decorations, no photos, nothing that made it feel like home yet, but it was mine. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and let the silence wash over me. No Linda calling me to clean something. No Gerald criticizing my work. No Chelsea making snide comments about my clothes or my hair or my existence. Just quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Saw what happened on social media. Proud of you. Breakfast tomorrow? Someone had already posted about the party. Of course they had. 85 witnesses, and at least one of them had been recording. I typed back, yes, 9 a.m. 3 dots appeared. Then, sleep well, Bianca. You earned it. I set the phone down and looked out the window. Denver's lights glittered below, millions of people living their lives in a city that didn't know my name. For the first time in 13 years, I had nothing to clean, no one to serve, nowhere to be, except exactly where I wanted. I closed my eyes and I slept. The next morning, I woke to gray light filtering through curtainless windows. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling was too high, the walls were too quiet. Then memory returned, and with it, a strange lightness I didn't quite trust. I made coffee on my 2-burner stove and sat at the desk with the USB drive in my hand. 3 videos, 7 door log entries, evidence that had already detonated my stepbrother's engagement and my father's investment deal. But this same evidence could do more damage if I wanted it to. I could post it online, upload it to every social media platform where Gerald's business partners might see it, email it to the Denver Business Journal with a detailed timeline of the cover-up. I could ensure that Marcus never recovered his reputation, that Gerald's company collapsed entirely, that the whole rotten structure of my family's facade came crashing down. I could destroy them. The thought was tempting. I won't pretend it wasn't. 13 years of swallowed anger doesn't disappear overnight. But I thought about my mother, about what she would want me to be. She wouldn't want me to become someone who pursued destruction for its own sake. She would want me to tell the truth, which I had, and then to let go. I plugged the USB into my laptop and reformatted it. The files vanished, deleted, not to be recovered. The original hard drive was still in Gerald's garage. He could do what he wanted with it. Delete it, keep it, throw it in the trash. I didn't need it anymore. I'd kept one backup, encrypted and stored in a secure cloud account, just in case they tried to rewrite history. Just in case anyone questioned whether I'd been telling the truth. But I had no intention of using it. Not unless they forced my hand. Justice. not revenge. That was the line. By Christmas, the fallout had become quantifiable. Gerald lost the Hayes investment, $2.3 million that would have expanded Monroe Construction into commercial development. He also lost the Whitfield contract, an $800,000 renovation project. James Whitfield had been at the engagement party. He'd watched the footage. He'd walked out without saying goodbye. The company was forced to lay off 4 employees in the week before Christmas. Gerald blamed market conditions in the email announcement. Everyone knew the truth. Marcus's vice president of operations title evaporated along with his company-funded apartment downtown. He moved back into Gerald's house, into my old basement room, as it turned out, since Chelsea had claimed his old bedroom years ago. The Porsche was sold to cover debts I suspected had accumulated during his year of fake MBA enrollment. Jessica Palmer was terminated on December 18th for violating company policy regarding workplace relationships and misuse of company time. According to Carol Whitmore, the termination was processed without severance. Jessica had apparently tried to claim wrongful dismissal, but the time-stamped footage made her case untenable. Linda and Chelsea had to cancel their planned Aspen ski trip. The family credit cards had been frozen pending a review of expenses that Gerald, suddenly anxious about appearances, insisted was routine. Rebecca got her $47,000 deposit back from the Broadmoor. The venue's cancellation policy included a clause for termination due to infidelity, apparently not an uncommon occurrence among their clientele. I learned all of this secondhand through news snippets and social media posts, and eventually through Rebecca herself. I didn't seek out updates on my family. I didn't need to. The Denver Business Journal ran a brief item about internal restructuring at Monroe Construction. No names were mentioned, but the timing was unmistakable. The truth had done its own work. My phone became a battlefield I chose not to engage. 47 missed calls in the week after the engagement party. Gerald, Linda, Marcus, Chelsea, all of them, cycling through my voicemail like they had suddenly remembered I existed. The text messages were worse. Gerald, we need to talk. You're still my daughter. No apology. No acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just an assertion of biology, as if DNA alone entitled him to my attention. Linda, this is affecting the entire family. I hope you're happy with what you've done. Classic Linda. Everything was about impact on her children, on the comfortable life she'd built on the foundation of my labor. Marcus. You think you're so smart? You ruined everything. I hope this was worth it. I stared at that message for a long time. Worth it. As if my integrity had a price tag. As if Rebecca's right to know the truth could be weighed against Marcus's right to deceive her. Chelsea. Selfish. Just like your mother. That one hurt. Chelsea had never known my mother, had only heard whatever version of her Linda had constructed. Using her name as an insult was a new low, even for Chelsea. I read every message. I didn't respond to any of them. Then I blocked Marcus and Chelsea's numbers. Whatever they had to say, I didn't need to hear it. I kept Gerald's number unblocked. Not because I had hope. Hope had died on the floor of that dining room along with my birthday cake. But because some small, stubborn part of me wanted to leave the door open. Just a crack. Just in case he ever became capable of genuine remorse. He hadn't called again since the first week. I wasn't surprised. Daniel was already at the coffee shop when I arrived. A small place near Meridian's downtown office, all exposed brick and mismatched furniture. He'd ordered me a vanilla latte exactly how I liked it. So, he slid the cup across the table as I sat down. How does freedom feel? I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. Weird. Good weird. Like I forgot how to breathe normally and just remembered. He nodded slowly, watching me. Daniel had this way of looking at people. Direct, but not invasive. Like he was really seeing you, not just waiting for his turn to talk. You did the right thing, he said. Rebecca deserved the truth. I keep second-guessing myself. The words came out before I could stop them. Was it my place to interfere, to decide what she needed to know? Bianca. Daniel leaned forward. You saw someone about to be hurt. You had evidence. You acted. He paused. That's integrity, not interference. I wanted to believe him. I was trying to believe him. You remember that senior position I mentioned a few months ago? Daniel's tone shifted, casual but deliberately so. Security analyst lead, 95,000 plus benefits. The posting went up last week. I looked up. You're not serious. I'm serious. And I already talked to Jennifer in HR. She wants you to apply. He smiled slightly. I may have mentioned you built a forensic-grade security system in your spare time. She was impressed. Daniel, don't say no yet. Just think about it. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. You've spent 13 years taking care of people who didn't appreciate you. Maybe it's time to let yourself be appreciated. I didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. But I didn't say no. Rebecca called on Saturday evening. I almost didn't answer. Her number was unfamiliar, and I'd been screening calls obsessively since the engagement party. But something made me pick up. Bianca? Her voice was different than I remembered. Stronger, maybe? Or just clearer. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I almost didn't. I tucked the phone between my ear and shoulder, curling up on my second-hand bed. How are you? A soft laugh. That's a loaded question, but better than I expected. Better than I have any right to be, probably. You have every right. Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. I wanted to thank you properly, Rebecca said. Not in a crowded restaurant or over text, properly. You don't have to. You don't. I do, her voice firmed. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't sent that email. I would have married him in 6 weeks. Had children with him, probably. Built an entire life on a lie. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, in 5 years, in 10, after we had kids and mortgages and a life I couldn't easily walk away from. She paused. You saved me years of my life, Bianca. That's not nothing. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. My dad's hiring for a marketing position, Rebecca added, her tone lightening slightly. Junior level, but good growth potential. I'm not offering it to you or anything. I just thought, if you knew anyone looking, I'll keep it in mind. Good. Another pause. And Bianca, if you ever need anything, a reference, a connection, someone to grab coffee with, I mean it. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for being honest when no one else was. She hung up, and I sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Validated. 3 months after the engagement party, I barely recognized my own life. The promotion came through in February. Senior IT security analyst at Meridian Financial Services, $95,000 a year, plus a bonus structure I was still wrapping my head around. My new office had a window, an actual window, with a view of the mountains on clear days. My apartment had transformed too. I'd bought a real couch, not second-hand but new, from an actual furniture store. A bookshelf that I was slowly filling with novels I'd always wanted to read but never had time for. Curtains, throw pillows, small things that made the space feel like mine. I'd started therapy in January. Dr. Patterson, a woman in her 50s who specialized in family trauma. Our first session, I'd talked for 50 minutes straight without pausing. She'd handed me a tissue box and said, "It sounds like you've been waiting a long time to tell someone your story." She wasn't wrong. Gerald's company had lost 30% of its revenue. The Denver Business Journal ran a follow-up piece about challenges facing regional construction firms, and Monroe Construction was mentioned by name. Gerald had been forced to downsize, selling the Cherry Hills house and moving into a townhome in Centennial. Marcus was working at a car dealership. I'd heard this from a former colleague of Gerald's who I'd run into at a coffee shop. He'd seemed embarrassed to share the gossip, but also clearly wanted me to know. I didn't feel triumphant hearing it. I didn't feel much of anything, actually. Marcus's fall was a consequence of his own choices. I had simply been the messenger. My mother's recipe box sat on my kitchen counter now, the one I'd retrieved from the basement before leaving. I cooked for myself, finally. Not for people who didn't appreciate it, for me. The email arrived on a Tuesday evening in March. I was making dinner. My mother's chicken cacciatore, a recipe I'd only recently felt ready to attempt again, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Gerald Monroe, subject line empty. I almost deleted it unread, almost. But that stubborn part of me, the part that had kept his number unblocked, made me open it. Bianca, I know I have no right to ask for anything. What happened at the party? What happened in the years before? I've had time to think. I failed you. I failed your mother's memory. I let Linda and her children come first because it was easier than facing how much I missed Catherine, and I made you pay the price for my grief. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. But if you ever want to talk, I'll listen. No excuses, no justifications, just listening. Dad. I read the email 3 times. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He said, "I failed," which was acknowledgement without apology. A step, but not a complete one. I let the email sit for a week, thought about it during therapy, talked through it with Dr. Patterson, who asked what I wanted from a potential relationship with Gerald. I didn't have a clear answer, but I knew what I didn't want: to return to what we'd had before. On Sunday, I replied, "Dad, I received your email. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I'm open to the possibility. Someday. When and if that happens, it will be on my terms, in a public place and with clear boundaries. If that's something you can accept, let me know." Bianca. I pressed send before I could overthink it. The door wasn't open, but it wasn't completely closed either. That was enough for now. December 7th, 2026, my 25th birthday. No basement, no forgotten cake, no dining room full of people who didn't know my name. Instead, I was at a small bar in Lodo. Low lighting, good music, mismatched chairs that somehow worked together. 4 people sat around a table with me: Daniel, Rebecca, and 2 colleagues from Meridian who had become genuine friends over the past year. The cake was red velvet. My mother's recipe, but baked by a local bakery this time. Not because I couldn't do it myself, but because I didn't have to anymore. I could pay someone else to do it. I could let myself be taken care of for once. Rebecca handed me a gift wrapped in silver paper. "For the next chapter," she said. Inside was a leather-bound journal, soft and expensive and blank, waiting for whatever I wanted to write. Daniel raised his glass. "To Bianca, the most honest person I know." "To Bianca," the others echoed. I blew out the candles on my cake, 25 small flames that flickered and died with a single breath. I didn't make a wish. Wishes were for people who needed magic to change their lives. I had changed my own. Later, after the drinks and the laughter and the hugs goodbye, I walked home through the December cold. Denver's lights glittered around me, and my breath fogged in the air, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Whole. Last year, my birthday ended with cake on the floor and words I'd never forget. This year, it ended with people who chose to be there, celebrating someone they actually knew. I unlocked my apartment door, stepped inside, and smiled. This was my life now. I had built it myself. For 13 years, I believed that if I just tried harder, they would love me. I was wrong. Some people don't want to love you. They want to use you. And no amount of effort, no number of perfectly cooked dinners or spotless floors or swallowed complaints will ever change that. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was accepting that I deserved to leave. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're the one who gives and never receives, who works and never gets thanked, who waits for birthdays that never come, I want you to know something. You are not a burden. You are not less than. You are not responsible for other people's inability to see your worth. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes, setting a boundary is the same as saving your life. And sometimes, the truth is all the revenge you need. You teach people how to treat you. It took me 24 years to learn that lesson. Don't let it take you that long. Thank you for watching my story to the end. If it resonated with you, please leave a comment and tell me your experience. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? What gave you the courage to leave? Or what's holding you back? Subscribe to this channel for more stories like mine, and check the description for more videos you might enjoy. Remember, your worth is not determined by how others treat you, it's determined by how you treat yourself.